All right, I'm currently on the phone with Alberto. He's another musician that reached out about the interview session. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Hey, hello. Thank you so much for having me on. My name's Alberto Racanati. My musical name is Alber. And yeah, I'm a musician living in Kansas City. I'm a trumpet player. I'm a educator. I basically try to be as much as I can a part of the local scene. I'm originally from southern Italy. So I'm also an immigrant in the USA, which is kind of like part of my daily life, basically. And yeah, putting out music, playing out live shows, trying to set up a high standard and raise the bar continuously with what I do.
All right. It sounds good. And thanks for joining me. So to start these interviews, I always kind of target, the beginning. Tell me about when you first came in contact with music and what about it kind of inspired you to want to pursue it?
So I do not come from a musical family or an artistic family. I do have memories of the first records, the first time there was bands that I like to sound like. But to me, stuff really started to happen when I think I got my first CD when I was like 9. It was a Manu Chao CD. I don't know if you ever heard of the name.
Doesn't sound familiar.
Is a singer-songwriter guy, very world music-y,
Okay.
so to speak, lots of languages in the music. For some reason, I really loved, there was a commercial that was going on and I really liked. I got the CD. Then when I was 12, there was a local school nearby that offered some one-on-one classes of music. And I do have a cousin that played the trumpet, and he had like an older one hanging around, and so that was it. Basically, that was the choice making was made in that moment. We have somebody that we do not have to buy a new instrument. There you go. There, start playing this thing. So
Sure.
I just kind of started, right? I just kind of started. And as I started, building my chops and understanding music and reading, I started listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers. I discovered Nirvana. I discovered like rock, eventually became metal music. So I kind of started on the down low and formal musical training like that, while starting to listen to the music that was out there that clearly did not have a lot of trumpet, was not very much like brass centric in any way, but I started developing passion for, besides just practicing, also listening to what was out there. So eventually, I just kept things going, kind of like as teenagers do. They just keep doing something by inertia. You just keep moving forward. And I started becoming a little bit more serious with the instrument classes. And so I kept studying through my high school. I kept studying the trumpet. I started playing in a bunch of bands. I learned how to play drums, which is a big part of what I do. Also, I would say drums is probably my secondary instrument. I started learning the drums and playing it in a bunch of bands locally. And eventually the time came when I had to make a decision whether to start, finding a day job or figuring out what, or really going into music like you mean it.
Let's go back a little bit. You mentioned that you are an immigrant to America. Tell me about the time frame between you kind of getting into contemporary, like American popular bands. I know they're global as well, but for the sake of this question, we're going to say American bands, versus when you immigrated.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say that, I clearly just speak for myself, but there's probably lots of people overseas that would agree with this. Since day one, you're bombarded with American pop culture and American media,
Mm-hmm.
the movies, the music, just even the public discourse sometimes, it just really resembles what happens over here. So there was definitely a fascination with that. That I'm still, I'm still getting a kick out of that to this day, even though I've been living here for the past 10 years. It's been a while.
Okay,
But
so
yeah,
that did all start before coming to live in the States.
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, yeah. Like
So,
all of my favorite bands were from here, basically. Yeah.
so tell me about what music training and classes is like in the school environment that you grew up in. Were you offered regular band classes and stuff when you were going through school?
So, I mean, it's a little bit different overseas because, maybe in America, lots of people can choose to go to band. So it's pretty normal to have somebody who does not do anything with music, but maybe they played the cornet back in high school or something. It's not really the case overseas. It's more like, I would say it's more special. There's not really music in everybody's curriculum. So I happened to go to a school that had this special program offered, and it was mostly like individual lessons more than band as you know it. So that's really what started it. So it was a lot of individual lessons. It was very, definitely, I would say, very tough, very like a not on the fun side. I had a few teachers that would get, really, really mad, and basically it was lots of
Sure,
negative reinforcement and you suck and all that kind of thing.
of course, of course.
Um,
Okay,
which
so
it's yeah.
So let's go forward a bit. Tell me about kind of how you kept music in your life after all of that. At some point, you mentioned before that you started transitioning to other instruments. Was that because it was difficult to find people to play with, just playing trumpet, or what was, your kind of motivation there?
Well, I mean, we were, me and my best friends to this day, right? We were like 13 or 14, and I was maybe practicing the trumpet for 2 years at this point. Like, it had no repercussions of what I had with my friends, right? As I said before, we liked Nirvana. Maybe at 14, 15, I started listening to Metallica at that point. So we were starting to let our hair grow out. We were listening to this music. There was no internet, so we were like, me and my friends were like, got a hand of a magazine, and we'll like be studying the pictures in the magazine to find out which guitar did they play and all this and that. And so clearly in that music there is no trumpet or anything like that involved, so trumpet was something that I like to do but on my own personal time. But then we started this idea that we were going to have a band, and that was going to be our living. When you're 13 you believe those things. And so basically that kept us going until I was probably in my early 20s. Like that's in different degrees. I didn't think about living out of music, metal music, when I was 21, of course, but anymore. But when it was 13 until 17, we wanted to have a band. And so basically we did not have a drummer because that's the hardest instrument to find, especially at that age, right? And so basically because we couldn't find anybody, there was an old set, catching dust, somewhere. I just rose up to the situation and just like started playing. And a few years later, I was, the drummer of the band, and we were playing shows and doing that kind of thing
Nice.
back in the day.
Okay.
And then eventually, I mean, the time came when, as I said before, where I was like 20, 21, clearly I was playing in bands, but it was nothing really worthwhile to say I'm doing something. So I did what most people from my area of the world end up doing, which is to leave, right? So I always kept, I mean, music was always the thing. You asked me, how did you keep music in your life? Well, it was never not a part of it. So in a way, I always kept things consistent. Like I'm always playing music, but at the same time, I had to find situations and emigrate and go where the music was happening in order for me to live what
Sure.
I wanted.
So that kind of brings me into the next question of, once you did kind of end up in the Kansas City area, how did you go about, finding people to play with?
Well, I came here because of UNKC. So I came here as a student primarily. So I've been in KC for 8 years at this point. And so the first 4/5, I mean, COVID was a weird, time. But community wise, I was invested completely in the school. So my hang was probably other grad students. I was a grad student, so fellow people. So lots of, maybe I wasn't so involved in the local scene for a little bit. I did play here and there, but I was mostly like, okay, academia. we'll play the orchestra concert tonight. I was more into that stuff because that's, clearly that takes a lot of effort and time on your end. So it's not like you can exactly be there writing music freely. So after school was over, I clearly, knew lots of people from that side of the academia. I just started going to concerts and talking to people who were doing things that I felt like I wanted to do. In Kansas City, in my opinion, it's always been very easy to get to know people and if you want to be in the loop, it's fairly easy because it might be tight knit, but it's not that big. So once you get to know the right person, but not even that. Once you know where those people hang, you just like show up and hang out with them. For me, it always worked out that way. Just show up, have a beer, show your face, talk to people, compliment them when you want to. And that goes a really long way, honestly. So that's how just networking. It's how I move around. And then obviously if your stuff is valid, if people like your things, they will want to be involved with that.
Absolutely. So that kind of brings us up to where we are now. Tell me about, the current projects that you're working on.
Yeah, so with my solo project, Alber, I just had a new single released yesterday, as a matter of fact. So I'm trying to push it to where I'm gonna have new music coming out every month. I'm playing shows as much as I can also in the city. It's starting to branch out of the KC area as well. So really, there's live shows, there's new music that's being released. I am working on a couple of bigger projects. I'm working on an audio video installation that I'm trying to premiere next fall, collaborating with other musicians. I'm currently, I don't know if you ever heard of the Charlotte Street Foundation in town. I'm a resident artist with the Charlotte Street Foundation, which is an amazing entity that basically exists to support local artists in KC. So I have a studio space there, I have rehearsal space over there, and basically the tools to succeed at what I'm trying to do, which is mostly promote my music as much as possible, just trying to play with other people. On top of my solo project, I also collaborate with a variety of other bands. I play a lot of free improv events in town. There's a good scene for that kind of music. I do electronic music events. I try to keep it as varied as possible, which is another thing that is special to Kansas City, I think. Because the circles are not that big, if you are a person who is versatile and enjoys experimenting, there will be things for you to do, because there's you kind of step in many different places with what you can do, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely. So with, the various kind of realms that you participate in music in, what are, some of your, most prominent memories that keep you motivated to keep working on music?
So something that I really cherish for me, especially as an immigrant, is the fact that I get to play in all these different genres that for me growing up, they were like maybe something that belonged to a movie. Okay. So I get to do these things and I get to do it in an authentic way. So some of the crazy experiences that I've had in Kansas City was that last year I played full time in a mariachi band, for example. That's one of the random things that I that I get to do. And some of the parties, some of the enjoyment that music brought to some of the parties that we played at, it's something that to this day unmatched in all the other concerts and gigs that I do, in the sense that it was very refreshing to play for people that have a longing for a distant land, and you're not just playing music they like, you're very much reawakening, rekindling their flame in a way. That's really like there is a relationship to their land that is explicated through music, if that's even making sense. But let's say that as somebody who feels that way many times, that was very special. Even though the music per se, you can put it in a box pretty easily of what's mariachi music when it comes to the ethnic origins of what you're doing or what it may mean for a certain person. That's kind of special. And yeah, I mean, in general, just being a part of the community, knowing that you can walk into a concert and seeing the usual suspects makes you feel like you're building a musical family. So really, every time I go to the ship, I go to Nighthawk, I go to other places where music is happening. It's kind of really comforting that you get to hear people. You get to consistently hear people you get to track their progress, and they do the same with you. So growing together with musicians that you respect in the community, that has been invaluable for me.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's a great point too about supporting the other people in your scene. All right, so what are your social media links? Where can people find you and check out your stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I am mostly active on Instagram. So Instagram.com/Alber underscore sounds. Alber is spelled Alber. And so that's where I'm the most active. You can also find me with the same handle. You can find me on YouTube. I sometimes post on TikTok. I am on Spotify named Alber. So just the first 5 letters of my name. And as I said before, I have a single that just came out yesterday. I have new music coming out every month right now. So yeah, that's where I will advertise coming concerts, coming releases, and all that.
Perfect. All right. So I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word. So, what's a message that you have that you think other people should hear?
Ooh, well, I do think that making music, regardless of what the outcome is, it's something that is usually often forgotten. There's nothing wrong with learning how to play the guitar just to spend 1 hour, learning it just for the sake of doing it at night. There's nothing wrong with learning how to produce to just enjoyment of life. It is good to do it. It doesn't matter if you do it and nobody picks it up, and it's fine to just enjoy things for music's sake, because I feel like that's where it's at, right? You play something, you produce something, and that makes you feel good regardless of the outcome. Many times we only think about the outcome, not thinking that what's the value, the inherent value of what we do, of the art that we produce every day. So I see a lot of value in just like doing. It doesn't have to be used, it doesn't have to go anywhere. Today we always have this content thirst, and yeah, I think I like to think about what I do in something that it just makes me feel good and maybe makes other people feel good that happens to be shared. But I like to feel it as a personal thing. So I would love to see other people kind of like just picking up a guitar, doing things without that social pressure that you have to put it on social media. You have to share, you have to produce a song, if that makes sense.